Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Another timeless bhajan written by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which are about his deities and the ones he worshipped at home. And today we'll be celebrating the appearance day of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I'll read a verse from the Bhagavatam. We can read it together. This is from the prayers by the demigods, Lord Krishna within the womb. And the translation is as follows. O Lord, who resemble the shining sun, you are always ready to fulfill the desire of your devotee. And therefore you are known as a desire tree, Vansha Kalpataru. When acharyas completely take shelter under your lotus feet in order to cross the fierce ocean of nations, they leave behind on earth the method by which they cross. And because you are very merciful to your other devotees, you accept this method to help them. And the word for word is as follows. If you like, please repeat. Swayam, personally. Samutirya, perfectly crossing. Sudustaram, which is very difficult to cross. Dyuman, O Lord, who appear exactly like the sun, illuminating the darkness of this world of ignorance. Bhava Arnavam, the ocean of nations. Bhimam, which is extremely fierce. Adabra Sohrida, devotees who are incessantly friendly to the fallen souls. Bhavat Pada Boruha, your lotus feet. Navam, the boat for crossing. Atra, in this world. Te, they, the Vaishnavas. Nidhaya, leaving behind. Yata, on to the ultimate destination. Vaikuntha. Sat Anugraha, who are always kind and merciful to the devotees. Bhavan, you. Let's try the Sanskrit. Swayam samutirya sadustaram dyuman Bhavarnavam bhimam adhabra saurada Bhavat padam boruhu navam atrate Nidhaya yata sadanugraho bhavan. Let's do a couple. One. Swayam samutirya sadustaram dyuman Vavarnavam bhimam adhabra saurida Bhavat padam boruha navamatrate Nidhaya yata sadanugrahayata. Swayam samutirya sadustaram dyuman Imam adabra zaurida Bhavat padambo ruhanava matrate Nidhaya yata sadanugraho. And the purport. This statement reveals how the merciful acharyas and the merciful Supreme Personality of Godhead together help the serious devotee who wants to return home back to Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his teachings to Rupa Goswami, said, Brahmanda Brahmate Kon Bhagyavan Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasade Bhai Bhakti Lata Bij. One can achieve the seed of Bhakti Lata, devotional service, by the mercy of Guru and Krishna. The duty of the Guru is to find the means according to the time, the circumstances, and the candidate by which one can be induced to render devotional service, which Krishna accepts from a candidate who wants to be successful in going back home, back to Godhead. After wandering throughout the universe, a fortunate person within this material world seeks shelter of such a guru or acharya who trains the devotee in the suitable ways to render service according to the circumstances, so that the Supreme Personality of Godhead will accept the service. This makes it easier for the candidate to reach the ultimate destination. The acharya's duty, therefore, is to find the means by which devotees may render service according to references from Shastra. Rupa Goswami, for example, in order to help subsequent devotees, published such devotional books as Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Thus, it is the duty of the acharya to publish books that will help future candidates take up the method of service and become eligible to return home back to Godhead by the mercy of the Lord. In our Krishna consciousness movement, the same path is being prescribed as follows. In our Krishna consciousness movement, the same path is being prescribed and followed. Thus, the devotees have been advised to refrain from 4 sinful activities: illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling, and to chant 16 rounds a day. These are bona fide instructions, because in the Western countries, constant chanting is not possible. One should not artificially imitate Haridas Thakur, but should follow this method. Krishna will accept a devotee who strictly follows the regulative principles and the method prescribed in the various books and literatures published by the authorities. The acharya gives the suitable method for crossing the ocean of nescience by accepting the boat of the Lord's lotus feet. And if this method is strictly followed, the followers will ultimately reach the destination by the grace of the Lord. This method is called Acharya Sampradaya. It is therefore said, Sampradaya Vihina Ye Mantraste Nishpala Mata, Padma Purana. The Acharya Sampradaya is strictly bona fide. Therefore, one must accept the Acharya Sampradaya. Otherwise, one's endeavor will be futile. Sri Narottam Das Thakur therefore sings, Tandera Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibhas, Janame Janame Hoye Abhilash. One must worship the lotus feet of the Acharya and live within the society of devotees. Then one's endeavor to cross over nescience will surely be successful. It's really good to see everybody, and thank you to the devotees of Houston for making such an immaculate, beautiful environment in which to practice Krishna consciousness. I can't find even one thing out of place, although I tried. It's just it comes natural to me. I was meditating on how hard it is to get everyone together, because you have to move heaven and earth to get here. Flying is not a great joy in life. The best thing you can say about airplane flight is it didn't crash. And nonetheless, sages at Naimisharanya came together. Great things happen when devotees come together, especially in kirtan, hearing and chanting, prasad, and then exchanging ideas about how to best execute the moods and methods of the acharya. That's what we're engaged in, so it's a meaningful assembly. And I'm greatly impressed by I'll rephrase. I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be among all of you, to be engaged in this work together. Somehow we've been chosen, one way or another, some by default, others by their acumen for managing and preaching. About today, we have in our method of practicing Krishna consciousness a very frequent opportunity to think of the acharyas. We pause, we don't eat for at least half a day, we then remember the acharyas. And today, remembering Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the ways in which Srila Prabhupada showed his affection, or his, I should say, reverence for Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur were evident in many of the statements he made, not the least of which was in Mayapur circa 1975, when a group of devotees were chanting outside the Chandrodaya Mandir when Prabhupada came back from his morning walk. And someone said to Prabhupada on the morning walk that, look, you've brought all these devotees here from the West. And Prabhupada then replied that, yes, and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur will deliver them. And we find the exaltation of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur even in his own time. There was a famous journalist who had a very popular magazine. Back then it was magazines and not a social media site or a podcast. He had many, many followers, and he consulted with Bhaktivinoda Thakur frequently and also included his teachings, and he coined the phrase, the seventh Goswami. The Goswamis under Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had revealed Lord Krishna's pastime places in Vrindavan. They had been lost in time. Krishna tells Uddhava in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, all things are lost, including the message of the parampara. But to speak of the geographical holy places where Krishna performs his pastimes. The Goswamis of Vrindavan brought both back under the direction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipano Shadharma Samstapako. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted them to survey all of the Vaishnava Shastras, all the Shastras, the commentaries of all the Acharyas, and bring one clear path for people to follow, which is the thrust of today's verse. In today's verse, preceding this verse is the famous verse Prabhupada quoted, Tvayam bujakshak kila sattvadamni samadhina veshita chetasaike pada potena mahatkritena kurvanti kovatsa padam bhavabdim. The ultimate goal of life is achieved by fixing our attention one-pointedly on Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's the source of everything. He's the ultimate object of meditation, the U-O-M. And he goes on to say, in this verse, actually it's Brahma speaking on behalf of the demigods to Lord Krishna in the womb, that tvatpada potena mahatkritena, that the path to achieve focus on Krishna and to achieve perfection of life is opened by the Mahat, the great souls. It can refer to both Krishna and the Acharyas. Twat pada potena mahat kritena kurvanti govatsapadam bhavabdim. They do something. Kritena, they bring together the most important aspects of the Shastra, and they codify it in such a way that they can follow it, and everybody else can follow it too. After all, as Radhika Raman, the inimitable scholar of ISKCON, child prodigy, had told me once, if a high-minded philosophy is useless unless there's an entry point for all people. And this is actually the question of the sages at Naimisharanya. How can all people be benefited by this dharma? What is the dharma? What is the ultimate dharma? Answer, savai pum samparo dharmo, yato bhakti radhoksaje, ahaitukam pratiyata, yatma supersedati, so that everyone can follow the path of Krishna. But then how to do that? That's also given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that's what the sages at Naimisharanya sought how can we make this available to everybody? Their mood is there, that Kali Yuga is coming, Krishna has left the planet. How will people be benefited? This is the preoccupation of the Vaishnava, is how to do good for others because they're paratuka dukkhi. So, Tvayam bhujaksha kila sattvanamni samadhina veshati chetasaike tvat pada potena mahatkritena kurvanti govatsa padam bhavavdim. The easy path, Bhagavatam is here saying, Brahma is saying, is to find out what the great souls have brought to bear in the form of a process of devotional service, and you just follow that. And if you follow that, then he says, the great ocean, which is mentioned in this verse also, as bhava arnavam. Bhava means the material world. Bhava literally means that place that you can never put your finger on, so to speak, because it's always changing. Whatever you have now, it's already gone now, 2 seconds later, because it's in flux. So this world we also call dramatically and rightly so, the world of birth and death, misery. Krishna certifies it as an untenable living place for the soul. He says, you can cross that ocean easily if you follow the process given by the Mahat. And what happens to the ocean that's impassable? It shrinks. How small, you might ask, Vaisesika Dasa. How small is it? The size of the calf's hoof print, which is a commonly and apparently viable way of measuring small spaces. Calf's hoof print, it's about as small as you can describe. And so the ocean shrinks and you can step over it. What's more, in the Krishna book, in commenting on these verses, these 2 verses in Prabhupada's summary, he says that when you approach the boat is the process given by the acharya, your sincere approach to the boat, or that is your intention, I'm going to take this fully. Even as you approach it, then the ocean shrinks. You won't even need the boat. You can step over. Is the emphasis on the process given by the acharyas. So where does the mood and method of our acharyas come from? Where do we find it in our sampradaya? Well, let's talk about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur came from a Kayasta family. They were wealthy, but then they weren't. That happens. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had distinguished himself academically and in every other way. He was appointed at one point the temple president of the Jagannath Puri temple. And if you came here feeling a little put upon by all your duties in managing your temple, then you can take shelter of the idea that at least you're not managing Jagannath Puri with its thousands of pandas and 64 offerings a day. That's a lot. And so forth. Bhaktivinoda Thakur managed that. He was appointed there. He was also greatly sought by the British government. And it was a time when India was still occupied. And he was able to navigate the dichotomy between the Indian population and the British and so forth, and distinguish himself. There was also in the air some sense of change. Calcutta, Bengal, Calcutta specifically, was a seat of learning and intellectuals, and there were groups of those intellectuals who were considering, well, how to do good for people, or how to find a universal process that would suit everyone. After all, living in India, you might find yourself deciding amongst various processes, since India has been subjected to many different cultures, many different philosophies. and has syncretized them over time quite well. And these intellectuals, amongst these intellectuals was Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who were discussing how to do good for others and what process would be best. They came up with something called Brahmoism, which was a smorgasbord of various philosophies, speculative, that all these put together might equal a universal process. I've seen it in Japan. There's a small village with the largest place there is a huge temple. It's maybe 5 times, 10 times bigger than this. And millions of people come there every year. And their insignia is a big pole, and on it has all the religious symbols of the world. I think they got them all, at least all the major ones. And they do some kind of healing work, and millions of people come there. They all dress with the same suit and the same color hat. And when we inquired where it came from, it was some guy. He made it up. He just put it together. And he had passed on, and he left it to his daughter. And inside the gigantic temple, there was a huge box, and in the box was the Supreme, but no one can open it. You can't look inside. That was a little disappointing. But it reminded me of the human effort to discern a process that will satisfy all souls. That was going on at the time Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and that was the result of that was Brahmoism. A little of this and a little of that. Amidst that discussion, Bhaktivinoda Thakur brought forth the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. He was destined to do so. As acharyas come into the world, apparently seem to be making their way. They make their way so rapidly, and in hindsight, with such precision, going from one to the next and making things clear for others. Bhaktivinoda Thakur did that amongst his friends, and as some have said, after bringing forth, or some say discovering the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which was hard to find because books were not readily available, there was no BBT, no high-speed printing, no overnight shipping and so forth. To find a particular shastra could be daunting. In fact, during the Matsya project, some of the devotees were looking for various scriptures, and it took them years in some cases to find them, and some of them had already disintegrated. So we can't take it for granted that we have the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Bhaktivinoda Thakur went to painstaking lengths to find it and bring it forth, and he introduced it and said, actually, this is the perfection of all the paths. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Western savior, or the Eastern savior of the world. He was the first convert to the Krishna consciousness movement after Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had given his clear teachings, and after some time, by degrees, in deviation from them, from the process, there had sprouted up many pseudo-practitioners with their own groups. Later on, these were pointed out by our acharyas, not the least of which was Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur then started a worldwide campaign to make sure that everyone could understand the tenets of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. He began by writing a book. Always a great idea, because books are impossible to deny. If you've ever received a book from someone that you didn't like and realized that it was hard to get rid of even though you didn't want it, it's hard to dispose of a book. There's something about it that is sticky. Bhaktivinoda Thakur composed the Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's precepts? Life and precepts, thank you. His life and precepts, and I don't know what the mail system was at that time. Circa 18, he was born in 1840, 30, 20. And somehow or other he was able to send by parcel service to various thinkers of the time, like Thoreau and Emerson, I've heard, and also universities. McGill in Canada is an example. That book was there for many years until some devotee purloined it. So apparently it's somewhere in Canada, but we don't know who has it and where it is. Nonetheless, that was his vision, that everyone should have the chance to take to this. Now, going into the mood of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and how it comes down to us, what's practical about this? Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his conception of Vaishnavism, conceived of Jaiva Dharma. This is not just another sectarian idea that a certain part of the world, a certain culture, some people would be qualified to practice this, but he said, no, this is Jaiva Dharma. This is the eternal occupation of the soul, all souls. Vidya vinaya sambhane, brahmani gavi hastini, shuni chaiva shupaki cha, pandita samadarshina, Krishna says. A wise person looks at the soul level and sees that all living beings are part and parcel of Krishna. They're not their external bodies. And this is the thrust of the teachings of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the very mood, kirata, hunanda, pulinda, pulkasha, abhira, shumba, yavanaka sadaya. Yenecha papa yadapashraya shraya, shudyanti tasmai, prabhavishnave namaha. It's a long list of people who would normally be considered outcast. They're not part of the varnashram system. They have no idea about the goal of life. In fact, their habits may be considered objectionable, to say the least. And he lists all of them and then says, no, all these people, they're included. This is Shukadeva, Bhagavatam. So you have Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the same mood that everyone should have an opportunity to take to Lord Chaitanya's teachings, which is non-different from the Bhagavat. The Bhagavat and Lord Chaitanya's teachings, same thing. He's made it available to the whole world. So with this mood, Bhaktivinoda Thakur set about reaching out to scholars and others around the world in other cultures. And he was also keen to see that everyone would come together from various cultures to celebrate this and to practice this eternal process of devotional service. Interestingly, he wrote a paper, it's called Sri Gauranga Samaj. And in the paper, he indicates also the mood of his outreach. He says that we should be inclusive, this is an essay he wrote, of three kinds of people in relationship with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Who are the three types of people? one is those who consider Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be Bhagavan, Krishna, as we do, right? We take from our acharyas the various ways in which they point out from the Bhagavat, especially Karabhajana Muni points out, this verse points to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu like Tyaktva Sadharmam, Tyaktvan Sadushida Sarepshicha Raja Lakshmin Dharmishta Arya Vachasa Yadagaranya. This verse, various acharyas have said, oh, that's about Krishna, someone else, that's Ramachandra, and the Karabhajana, our acharya, recent acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said, that's Lord Chaitanya. So our acharyas bring out from the Bhagavat. So we consider, do we not, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Bhagavan, Krishna himself, Swayam Bhagavan. Just say yes. Yeah, we do. That's part of our teaching. But then he says, we should also be inclusive of those from maybe other sampradayas who don't see him as Bhagavan. They just see him as a great acharya. This is definitely a great acharya. And then he says there's a third kind of person who has no context whatsoever, but they appreciate what he's done for society, and they say, he was a reformer, we like this. He marched on the Kazi and said, we're not going to take it that you'll restrict a religious activity in the streets of performing Sankirtan. He stood up for the lower castes, people will say. From that perspective, they'll say, look, he made Haridas Thakur his namacharya. He was a Mohammedan. At that time in society, he was totally outcast by the Brahmin class. He's like untouchable. So were Rupa and Sanatan. They couldn't even go in the temple in Jagannath Puri. Such was the zeitgeist at the time. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, for our outreach, we should be inclusive of all three of these. This is the mood of the Acharya. The Acharya wants that everybody come into the tent, everyone get an opportunity. This is practical for us, right? Because we're always trying to adjust our preaching in such a way that we can gather those people from the least common denominator who don't have context whatsoever, right? Say yes. Yeah. And so this was Bhaktivinoda Thakur's mood. Do you find that slightly startling? That he would appreciate all three, that the third one would say, well, he's not, don't believe he's God, but he's definitely a great reformer. So why would he say that? He goes on in the essay, when you make the tent big enough and you can bring people in who have even a little appreciation, then they'll associate with those who have advanced appreciation of the Lord, those who are uttama adhikaris, and those who have realized through Shastra and through their own Shraddha that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Having them come in is very similar to the ways in which Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur conducted his outreach. For instance, he would hold festivals, and he had concentric circles of concentration of the preaching. So in the outer circle was the diorama, which at that time was like going to Orlando to see the mouse. And people would bring their kids, come here, let's look at this. You know, they have these static images of various concepts about values and better life and religious thoughts and pastimes and so forth, and people would be drawn to that as more of a all-inclusive. And then if they accidentally wandered a little bit further in, they get closer and closer to the kirtan and to the teachings of the bhagavati. So it was almost like a web where they get caught. And this is the mood of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Naturally, great souls want to do good for others. This is the observation of Shukadeva Goswami when he saw Lord Shiva, who, for the sake of saving the universe, had swallowed the, what was that called? Hala hala? Something you don't want, right? Hala hala. And it had emanated from the ocean of milk. And then Shukadeva saw it. And he narrated that, he drank it to save everybody else. And then he said, Tapyam te lukatapena sadhava prayōjitaḥ parama aradhanam tadi purushasya kilamana. This is what marks the great souls. Is they take some pain on themselves, for the sake of saving others. This is the greatest type of tapasya or yajna, that they want to do good for others. So we've inherited this from our acharyas. And the Acharya Sampradaya is based on a couple of principles. One is that we should be deeply rooted in Shastra, just like a tree. For it to branch out and produce many fruits, it has to be deeply rooted. So in our line, devotees should be deeply rooted in Shastra, and most particularly in Srila Prabhupada's books. To that end, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta started this Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Sarvabhauma. And then we should also have a wide outreach to touch the lives of people so that they can come closer to Krishna consciousness. And that requires the vision of the acharyas, that it's Jaiva Dharma, it's meant for all souls, even squirrels and snails. what to speak of, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur famously said, we may even preach to the vegetable tribes. That mood. And for the sake of that, we adjust. We adjust for the sake of that, not the other way around. We manage, we come up with ways in which to organize ourselves, but our first idea is how to give the greatest good to the most people, to most living entities. Started at Naimisharanya, continued through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, comes down through our acharyas. Srila Prabhupada exemplified all of these things in his Yukta Vairāgyaṁ, using everything for the sake of giving people the opportunity to take Krishna consciousness. Meanwhile, he insisted that we be deeply rooted in Krishna consciousness ourselves. And those are my introductory remarks. And now I'll take a few reflections or questions, starting with His Holiness Bhadrarinarayan Swami, who I'd like to, because he doesn't have a mic yet, I'd like to express my deep gratitude to Maharaj for always exemplifying the mood of compassion, compassionate preaching to the fallen souls. Hare Krishna.
I thought you were going to say, was following in your line of looking for fault. That's really more my nature. You were talking about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and arranging his festivals with concentric circles, getting deeper and closer to Chaitanya Charitamrita. And that by bringing them in, they would mix with the pure devotees and become purified. They would become elevated. I have often, in my role as a contrarian, I have often heard the other side of the coin. And we could even quote Srila Prabhupada, rather than adding more water to the milk, rather you leave the milk and boil it down thicker. So if we open far and wide and we let all gradations and, well, we're going to water down the core of ISKCON, and it's just going to become muddled. You keep adding milk to yogurt, after a while it's no longer yogurt. So we have to boil the milk, we have to keep it concentrated and pure, otherwise it will lose all potency. So that's my question, the other side of the coin.
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive. The ways in which we reach out to people are consistent with the mood of Krishna and the acharyas. After all, Krishna saved Putana. What did she do? It's really hard to figure out. You can read the commentaries. Good luck finding something that says this is what she did. The mood of looking for the needles in the haystack, this is our job. Ishvare taradineshu balisheshu dusatsucha prema maitri kripopeksha yakaroti samadhyama. We're ostensibly a madhyama adhikari movement, which means that we make discrimination. We look for the ripe fruits. We know that Krishna is the ultimate object of our meditation, and we engage ourselves in that way. We make appropriate friendships with devotees based on our work together and our hearing and chanting together. We avoid those who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. And for those who are a little open, we pour in as much mercy as possible. Meanwhile, as was the admonition of Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the essay that I referred to just a moment ago, he said, we should maintain a core, those who are have already realized that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Bhagavan, and that Srila Rupa Goswami is our Acharya and following the footsteps. We should go very deeply. You might want to turn that off for a sec because it's giving feedback. we should maintain that core and at the same time bring people closer so that they get association with those who are deeply absorbed in hearing and chanting. So both have to go on at the same time. And I would personally argue that it's not you. It's something else happened. Thank you. Sorry. That preaching is our sadhana. It's not that the outreach is something else and then the bhajan is something else. Our outreach is our bhajan. And Prabhupada enunciates this in one of his famous purports. What is that? Shrinvan grinam samsmarayam chintayam namani rupani chamangalani te kriyasu yat swachcharanada vindayo avishchacheta na babaya kalpate. The third line that he says, kriyasu yat swachcharanada vindayo. Prabhupada in his purport says, this means that we please Krishna by practical service. And Prahlad Maharaj mentions at the end of his prayers to Nrsingadev, number 50, he says, we engage in very practical service. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, not mutually exclusive, it's a tree, there's roots, there's branches. The deeper the roots go, the further out we can go. That's why we consider that if you're chanting 16 really good rounds, you'll have a much better time of your outreach. Because people see something in your eyes and they'll say, whatever you have, I want. And they'll want to have that. So we can do both at the same time. And also, what would an assembly of Vaishnavas look like if they were deprived of the opportunity of going out, crossing the threshold of their apartment, their home, their mobile home, their van, whatever it is, and going out into the great unknown, also called the public, and having to hold forth and stand up for what they've heard. In other words, you can't isolate the two. If you just have devotees in an academy learning all the verses and going deeply within hearing chanting, they're going to want to burst out and teach it to someone. And if they haven't had the opportunity to do that and see what the world looks like and test their mantras, because how will you know that you're actually becoming spiritually advanced until you go into public? You haven't lived until you've had somebody spit on you. Have you ever had anybody actually spit on you? How many? 1, 2, 3, 4. Try for it. We were out in Colorado, in Denver, not so long ago, and we were going door to door in one of the scariest apartment buildings I've ever been in. I was afraid to, we did it, but walking down the stairs and I go, what's down here? And one of our participants in the door-to-door escapade was a doctor, a very good-looking doctor too. He's also unmarried, I think. Wealthy, smart, and I just happened to walk by when he knocked on somebody's door. They looked at him and slammed the door, and I said, I bet that's the first time that ever happened to you. and it's like, best thing that ever could have happened. So we solidify what we're learning in the Bhagavad Gita. We see the three modes when somebody opens the door and there's 10 parrots flying around the room. I saw it in Toronto. I was like, oh my God, you live with birds inside here. And other people live in squalor. Other people, they're desperate, they're thirsty. And until we see that for ourselves, we have an active movement. We're out meeting people and noticing that they, when touching the holy name, or when the holy name touches them, they actually awaken. And then we think, God, if they awoke, well, why aren't I awakening? Maybe I should lean into this more. So our movement is, when it's juxtaposed with the hearing and chanting and the going out, that vital part. In our management, unless if we are making plans, as we are, to reach all the people in North America, then it makes sense to organize and make charts. They all make sense. But as soon as you forget that part, all you're doing all day long is making charts and look at them. It's the most tedious and I'm looking for a word that's brutal. Okay, tedious. Monotonous, frustrating, draining exercise, unless there's a thrust to it of getting out there, meeting the people, giving them an opportunity to hear the holy name, to take prasadam. That's when devotees feel happiest, right? Say yes. And Prabhupada mentions this in the Sri Upanishad. Said, Kanishta Adhikaris complain about everything. They argue amongst themselves about this, that, this, all the little details. Madhyama Adhikaris, on the other hand, or even Prabhupada calls them Uttama Adhikaris in the Upadeshamrita. He said, what is the nature of the Uttama Adhikari? Always thinking how to give Krishna consciousness to others. That's the preoccupation. That's what Prabhupada said. Totally strong in sadhana and always preaching and always thinking, how do I give this to other people? Prabhupada said, that's an Uttama Adhikari. So, which would you rather have? A movement of Kanishtas? Keep in mind, they argue with each other about who's in charge, which is the best idea. Or would you rather have Madhyama Adhikaris or Uttamas? Let's hear for the Kanishtas. Nobody? How about Madhyamas or Uttamas? Then you send people out, and then you have an intensity of the hearing and chanting, and really emphasize it. So I think not mutually exclusive, indicated by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that they coexist. They go together.
I want to thank you for the excellent answer.
Thank you, Maharaj.
If the roots are deep of the tree, then you can tolerate and give something. You said it's
Yes.
a combination.
Thank you. That's why when we conceived of 4 laws of book distribution, the first one is your sadhana must be strong. Otherwise, what are you going to give? You just see the world as a confused place, criticize others. Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for helping distribute Srimad Bhagavatam sets all over the world and Chaitanya Charitamrita sets. So in the last 5 years, we have distributed 108 times more than last 50 years. Chaitanya Charitamrita sets. This is BBT totals worldwide.
Thank you.
108 times more.
I didn't ask her to say that. She's spontaneous. Always engaged.
I have the stats, if anybody
She
wants
has
to.
the stats to prove it. Yeah, please go ahead.
And one more reflection. Very nice comment. And you said Srimad Bhagavatam is same as Chaitanya Charitamrita?
Same, like they say in Thailand, same, but different.
Same, different. So I just remembered one comment maybe by you. Gita is a law book. Srimad Bhagavatam is a case study. And Chaitanya Charitamrita is all the loopholes. To include
Thank
everybody.
you. Those are compelling. Thank you for all you do.
Hare
Amazing
Krishna.
service.
Yeah, I really like the answer that you gave to His Holiness Badrinarayan Swami's question. I would like to extend it perhaps a little more to say that not only... Oh, should I speak into that?
Just keep that cube somewhere near you. Thank you.
Not only are the two things not mutually exclusive, but actually, going out there into the outer circle and making the adjustments necessary to connect with people, making that personal sacrifice of not being in the comfort zone of the inner circle, actually is boiling the milk. It's not that one is watering it down, that adjustments that we need to make, that some devotees may criticize as watering it down, that is boiling the milk. And I mean, my personal experience is that sometimes in preaching, yeah, you have to wear clothes that maybe you're not so comfortable with, or say things that you're not comfortable with, or hear things that you're not interested in hearing, because you have to hear people's mundane thoughts and ideas and then have a conversation with them. But that's where you make the most growth, the deepest connections with Krishna. You feel the most mercy coming down from the acharyas. And recently we started a morning program, which is like an outreach morning program. It's called Sunrise Bhakti, Yoga and Meditation. And we have all kinds of people just coming in. And the rounds that I chant, the japa that I chant with those new people who know nothing, where you're teaching them the mantra first time they ever chanted it, those are the best rounds. And we're not wearing saris and dhotis and tilak. We're just creating a space where people can come on off the street and do mantra meditation. And it's like, that's boiling the milk.
Thank you, Prabhupada, for being such a brilliant representative of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Anutama Prabhu.
Hi, Vaisesika Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Anutama Prabhu.
Just a question coming from your discussion about the importance of associating with acharyas and serious devotees. Considering this is a leadership meeting, sometimes we see in our society there's a tendency to think, for instance, this person has joined my home program. I've actually heard this. I don't want them to go to the temple, because in the home program we have very high standards and we're very clear about what the perfection is. And they go to the temple, they see all kinds of not very serious devotees, and we need to isolate them. On the other hand, sometimes we hear people actually leave Krishna consciousness because they feel the president or the leader in a particular community is kind of dealing with them like, you're my property. You know, you joined here, you can't go there, you can't go there, you're mine. So how do we address those types of problems within our communities? Because it seems to really turn people off at some point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Adutta Prabhu, for such a practical and, well, all-pervasive issue. It's a human nature. The sociologist Michels wrote about the iron laws of oligarchy. Those, he says, who take up a noble cause naturally tend to protect their position at the cost of the noble cause over time. And that's why political movements that are well-intentioned, people who take office who may be well-intentioned, although it'd be probably hard to find one these days, tend to then change the way they see their job and try to consolidate power more and more rather than do their work. There's no replacement for maturity and enlightenment. We can't manage it out of the system. Devotees have to be detached. Vāsudēve bhagavati bhakti-yogaḥ prayōjitaḥ janayaty vairāgyaṁ jñānaṁ ahaitukam. When you practice devotional service, naturally you'll get a sense of detachment and knowledge, which will make you more flexible and so forth. So how my experience in being part of a community is that management means solving problems. Problems come from people, personal interaction. If I accept that that's the norm, even amongst devotees, then I'm better equipped to face it and deal with it. Best way to deal with it, I've found, is patiently and through meticulous conversation. As Stephen Covey wrote in his book about 7 habits of highly successful people, first seek to understand. It's easy enough to take a position and then say, I want to protect my position. In fact, ISKCON Resolve, who when they answer the phone, they say, ISKCON Resolve, get over it. I've used them a number of times, but I also talk to them deeply about, what are the methodologies, what's behind all this. Is that try to understand people's circumstances, what's beneath the surface. And what I find to be solidifying in a community is the act of taking the time, even in the most trying circumstances. I'm conflict avoidant, it's my nature. But I have to face these issues and bring the parties together and then talk about it. And I find that when there's the light of awareness through communication, then oftentimes we can come to an enlightened understanding together. And that's the greatest victory we can have in our communities. Talk about boiling the milk. really learning how to get along with one another, despite the fact that we come from different cultures and have different ways of seeing things, different gurus and this and that. When we're able to come together and have a common understanding and appreciate one another's point of view, and for the sake of the higher good of the mission, we decide to cooperate one way or another. One of those is worth, I don't know, what do I want to compare it to? It's invaluable. And that's what really makes a community strong, is taking the time to do that. So the only remedy I've seen is to talk about it. One could use a public forum, for instance, if there are issues. I gave a class. How horrible is it to quote your own class? This is disgusting. But it's an example, because I really felt it. There was some issues about ways in which people would come into the community and then be out of resonance with the rest of the community. And is that okay? Because we have ISKCON and it's a big banner, and then we say, okay, anybody can come say whatever they want. And my opinion is that every community is sacred, and we should respect them as long as everyone's following the rules, which is another thing. And those who come into a community should recognize that they're there to serve and say, how can I serve your community, and so forth. And I'm giving this example because after I gave the class and was very frank about it, a lot of people came up to me afterwards and said, thank you for being clear on this point. And so we have to be clear on points, and we also have to take the time behind the scenes to talk to each person and really get a clear understanding of what it is that they need. And not give up on people, because I was thinking of making coffee table book, or what's that other thing besides coffee? Well, it's decaffeinated, chicory table book, about the great characters of ISKCON. I could definitely fill a big thick book. Characters meaning eccentrics. Practically everybody might be eccentric in one way or another, but there are some outliers. And somehow or other, Prabhupada accepted them all and let them in the tent. And the way he dealt with a lot of those people was very forgiving, and he looked for another place. For instance, when people who are constantly complaining and can't get along with this, then he said, okay, just come and join my party. If you can't go there, go somewhere else. Join with me. So those are a few thoughts, mainly that we have to take the time to communicate on a deep level with people, to come to a common understanding. And it may take a long time, it may take years actually, to come to that. We have to sincerely try. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandot Pranam. Thank you so much for a wonderful class, especially the question answers. One question is bothering me all this time is, we hear from Uttamadhikaris all the time to practice Trinadapi Sunichena, Tarurapi Sheshana, Amanina Manadena, Kirtaniya Sadahari. Where do we see this as a role model? Should we see this role model in Kanishtadhikaris, Madhyamadhikaris, or Uttamadhikaris? Where is the gap between practice and theory? Would like to see real practice from top down or bottom up. Can you please help us understand?
Could you ask a one-sentence question with no semicolon?
So basically, Trinadapi Sunichena, who are the person?
Just ask a question. You're giving a lot of information and then forming it into a big ball, like a lot of rubber bands. Just give me one sentence with a question mark at the end.
So this practice of Trinadapi Sunichena, who should be the role model?
You.
Okay.
Or I should. I mean, each one of us have to do that. In other words, we should find fault with ourselves and say, I have to be representative. Even in the face of I see it, I don't see it, somebody else. Oh no, look inwardly and try to find one's own fault. That should be our religion. What's your religion? Trying to find my own faults and to overcome them. Then we'll be busy all the time. We won't have time for analyzing other people. It's true. If we actually deal with our own issues and become aware of them, we may also be very forgiving for others, to others. It's not an intellectual exercise. It's an act of sincerity to try to see how can I improve. Thank you. There's a few more minutes. Yes, Prabhu.
Hey Krishna. Sometimes it feels like when we try to approach anybody, it seems like a kind of an intrusion in somebody's life.
Yeah.
So how to address that? Why are we intruding?
Well, I could say that my friend Richie Corsa intruded on my life when he brought me Back to Godhead magazine, knocked on my door. He wasn't a devotee, but he got a magazine from a monk downtown Berkeley, California on Telegraph Avenue, took his last 50 cents, this was in high school, and he said, I don't want it, but I figured you might be interested. It is interesting. For instance, if we go out to distribute books, we're holding books, we're waiting for somebody to come by, just by our positioning, we're basically saying, your life is really messed up, and I'm gonna fix it for you. So we have to have a gentle approach. It requires having respect for people. In fact, this is the directive of the Shastra, of the Acharyas, is to respect others. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani vanupashyati sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tato navijugupsate. Sri Upanishad, number 6. Anupashyati means to study how the great souls see everyone equally. And we should try to follow in their footsteps, not imitate. We should try to follow in their footsteps and appreciate them. When we have a sincere, a realized view of other living beings, we'll naturally show respect and they won't feel the intrusion. Some will. Some resent the presence of religious people. And they'll let you know, one way or another. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. If you've ever had somebody, when you approach them or you have if you ever had a Harinam Sankirtan that's really going, Dintanakadina, the tall is really happening and the tune is not too fast, not too slow, and it's obviously making people swoon. And then you find one guy walking by and he pretends like you're not even there. I mean, first of all, good luck with that. The holy name already hit him, so it's too late. But still, he tries his best to pretend that you don't exist. Or that can happen on book distribution. You approach somebody and they pretend that you're not even there. And so we have to develop a respect for people. We have to know why they feel like that. We have to follow the directive of the Shastra, which is don't bug people when they're not interested. That's in the verse I quoted earlier. I paraphrased it a little bit. And also, we have to learn the art, the bedside manner of approaching people in such a way that their heart opens. That's what Prabhupada called the great art of book distribution. It's the great art of preaching. How many parents of devotees met Prabhupada and then they changed. They said, I want my kid out of this. And by the time they left the room, they're like, yeah, that's pretty good. You could stay. Because Prabhupada opened their heart. We have to be doctors. In fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, the devotees are doctors. He called them Vaidyas. He said they carry two things, hymns and instructions, a little black bag. I just say practically, the way I teach book distribution, because the way I practice it myself, it's an evolution over time, is I put people in the position of the Acharya, and I'm there to learn from them. When I approach them like that, they don't feel the intrusion, even though it's obviously an intrusion, because I just knocked on their door, woke them up, they're still in their underwear having, a little sandwich or something like that at noon. They woke up at noon. And here I am busting at their front door. And one thing we say to people, and we really mean it, is we say, you look spiritual. And that's not being superficial, because we're asked to do that in the Sri Upanishad. Yastu sarvadi bhutani atman ivan anupashyati. It means you should follow this principle of seeing everybody as spiritual soul. And so when we approach them in that way, in a gentle way, say, you look spiritual, what's your secret? We ask them that question, what's your secret? In fact, some devotees just cut to that question. I noticed, I was watching a video of Krishna Saka Prabhu distributing books at a festival where people come who are from Arabic-speaking backgrounds. And he was approaching people and said, what's your secret? And what that says is, you're my teacher, I want to learn from you. I'm putting you on the Vyasasana, I'm going to kneel down, and you please tell me what it is. That's our approach. Our acharyas say, approach people more in that mood. Why did Prabhupada walk around personally with a pot and serve people by hand at his first open houses? Remember that? Mukunda Maharaj wrote. He walked around with he cooked it all, he invited people to the loft, and he walked around and here, take. He was serving out personally. Why did he do that? Because he respected the principle. They're all spirit souls and he's trying to feed them. So it's just an art, a way of learning how to touch the soul of somebody else. And Prabhupada had it, and we can learn from him. And that brings us to the end. Thank you for this opportunity. It's so great to be here, and I'm grateful to the organizers too, to have a class, a Bhagavatam class that's an hour and 15 minutes. That's fantastic. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Radha Nilamadav, Shri Giriraj, Shri Gaurnitai, if you so desire, please bless and empower our assembly who have come here today to work together to expand the Sankirtan movement all over North America in ways that have never been seen before, in great cooperation and with sincere desire to please your lordships. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpavisha kripa sindhe vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha nanta koti vaishnaviniki jai gaur premanande haribol.